Welcome to Binglish Unlocked.
Welcome to the deep dive. You know that feeling, right? Whether you're tackling, I don't know, a new language, maybe building a business, or honestly, just trying to get out of bed on time without hitting snooze like 7 times.
Oh, absolutely. It's that universal struggle, isn't it? We all hit those points where the goal just feels so far away, and the path, well, it seems incredibly blurry, almost impossible sometimes.
Exactly. So if you've ever felt that, listen up. Here's the thing. No matter your goal, consistency is like the quiet superpower that unlocks everything else. Today, our deep dive isn't really into motivation. And we all know how fickle that can be, right?
Yeah, totally unreliable.
Yeah. Instead, we're digging into consistency. It sounds simple, maybe even a bit boring, but it's the habit that quietly builds every other habit and transforms you from the inside out.
And what's really striking about consistency is, well, it's kind of the opposite of motivation. Motivation is an emotion, it's fleeting, it often vanishes right when you need it the most.
Like finding Wi-Fi in the desert, I always say.
Exactly. But consistency, that's different. It's a practical, repeatable skill. It doesn't just disappear. It's, always there for you to tap into.
Okay, so our mission today is to unpack exactly how to build that consistency, especially on those days, the ones where you absolutely don't want to. We'll be sharing some really practical micro tips along the way, paying special attention to those of you learning English, hopefully helping these ideas really stick. Let's jump in.
All right. So the first big idea, the one that can really reshape how you approach this whole thing, is moving past this myth of motivation, and instead embracing the power of systems.
The myth of motivation. I like that. Because most people are stuck waiting, aren't they? Waiting for motivation to strike like some magical weather pattern.
Exactly. They'll say things like, oh, I'll start when I feel ready, or I'll study when I'm in the mood.
And that mood, let's be honest, it rarely shows up on schedule. I mean, if I only worked on these deep dives when I felt perfectly inspired, wow, we'd probably still be back on episode 1.
Right. It's just not reliable.
So that frustration you mentioned, relying on motivation, it feels like trying to get that Wi-Fi in the desert, totally unreliable, super frustrating. What's the real issue there? Why does it keep us stuck?
Well, that frustration is exactly why it's a dead end. Because what actually works day in, day out isn't about how you feel. It's about building systems. Simple routines that run on autopilot.
Like brushing your teeth.
Precisely. You don't wake up and have a big debate about whether or not to brush your teeth, do you?
You just do it.
You just do it. The system takes away the need for that internal debate.
I found this to be so true. For me, that system was setting a fixed time to shadow English podcasts. Every morning during breakfast, didn't matter how sleepy I was, that little 10-minute ritual, it just became automatic. I stopped thinking about it. I just hit play. And that's the magic, right? You stop negotiating with yourself. The system doesn't care how you feel. It just runs.
Exactly. So, okay, if you're listening and you're learning English, here's a little challenge to get you started. Say 2 or 3 sentences out loud every single day, even when you're tired. Actually, especially when you're tired.
Don't wait for the mood.
Don't wait for the mood. Build the muscle instead.
Okay, so that idea of systems doing the heavy lifting, it leads us right to the next question, doesn't it? How do you even start building those systems? Especially when maybe discipline feels like a foreign language itself.
Good question.
Well, it turns out consistency itself is kind of like a muscle you grow. You can't just flip a switch, can you? And suddenly be this super consistent person.
No, absolutely not. And that's a really common misconception, I think, that you need this huge life-altering push to suddenly become consistent. But that's not it at all.
So what is it then?
Real discipline, true consistency, it's grown slowly, incrementally, just by showing up, even maybe especially on the days you really, really don't want to.
I could definitely relate to that. For me, it was little things like waking up 30 minutes earlier to practice speaking English, even if I sounded half asleep.
Still counts.
Yeah. Or giving up that endless doom scrolling at night to, edit notes for the show or prep some English phrases. And it genuinely hurt at first. Felt like a real sacrifice. But after a few weeks, I didn't even miss the scrolling.
Interesting.
I was like, oh, hey, I guess I'm becoming that person now, the one who just gets stuff done.
And that's the really cool part about this gradual growth. You become that person. It's not some overnight thing. It's a quiet evolution built one rep at a time. Repetition, it quite literally rewires your identity.
It actually changes your brain.
Yeah, fundamentally. Consistent, tiny actions physically remodel your brain's neural pathways. It's neuroplasticity. It turns something that felt hard into something that feels automatic, part of who you are. It makes you truly that person over time.
Wow. Okay, so here's a micro tip for you listening. Pick a time of day when you know you're usually weakest. Maybe it's late evening, maybe right after lunch.
More time.
Yeah, the slump time. And just do one small English task then. Think of it as your discipline, Jim. Just show up, even if it's literally for 5 minutes.
Just showing up is the win. And, if you're looking for ways to make those disciplined gym sessions almost automatic, this next idea is, well, it's incredibly powerful. It's all about linking habits.
Linking habits.
Okay.
Yeah, the secret to making consistency feel almost effortless is attaching that new habit you want to build onto something you already do without thinking.
Ah, okay. Like tying your shoelaces before you go for a run. You don't think about the laces. They just sort of signal the next step.
Exactly like that. It's a cue.
So, for example, after I brew my morning tea, which I do every single day, I grab my notebook and write just one English sentence about my day. The tea isn't just tea anymore.
It's the trigger.
It's the trigger, yeah. The action that pulls me right into the next one. And what I find so powerful about that is just how elegantly simple it is. For instance, every time I take a walk now, I listen to an English podcast.
Automatically.
Pretty much, even if it's just for 5 minutes. The act of starting the walk, putting my shoes on, whatever, it immediately triggers the podcast habit. There's no internal negotiation, no skipping. It's just part of the walk now.
I love that. Okay, so here's a fun challenge for you listening. Pick one daily action, something you already do without fail. Brushing your teeth, pouring your coffee, maybe even just switching off your morning alarm.
Anything automatic.
And attach 5 minutes of English practice to it. Make it small, make it simple, but make it absolutely linked. Because once that trigger is locked in, consistency stops depending on your willpower.
It just happens. It becomes automatic. So, okay, once those triggers are kind of in place, you might notice something a bit surprising. A lot of this consistent action, it doesn't always feel exciting.
Right.
In fact, sometimes it can feel downright boring.
Boring. Yeah, that doesn't sound very motivational.
Exactly. But this boring part, that's actually where the real magic is happening.
Okay, but that feels so counterintuitive, doesn't it? We're constantly bombarded with images of like instant success and dramatic breakthroughs. How do you convince someone that the boring part is actually where the progress lies? Especially when it feels like absolutely nothing is happening.
That's a really excellent point. We're conditioned to expect these big, grand revelations, these movie montage moments. But the reality is real progress is often super repetitive, almost dull.
So your own experience.
Well, when I was seriously learning English, I used to think every study session had to be this, intense, amazing breakthrough. But honestly, most of my real progress came from the truly boring stuff.
Like what?
Like repeating the same phrases over and over, listening to the same podcast episode twice, maybe 3 times, writing the same tricky word 10 times until it's stuck.
It doesn't sound glamorous.
Not at all. It's like watering a plant. You don't see it grow right away, day by day. But if you stop showing up, stop watering it, oh, you'll definitely notice then.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, consistency doesn't always feel like a breakthrough, but that steady, maybe boring action, that's what builds the roots.
So for all you English learners listening, please don't get discouraged if your daily practice feels a bit plain. That's actually a really good sign.
It really is.
It means it's quietly becoming ingrained, just a normal part of your life. And hey, here's a simple tip to keep you going through that phase. Start tracking your boring wins.
Boring wins, I like that.
Yeah, just write down every small action, like spoke English for 3 minutes today, or read one paragraph out loud, maybe listen to English while I was cooking dinner.
Yeah.
These wins seem tiny on their own, but you add them up. That's what builds fluency.
Absolutely. And if you're wondering how to keep those boring wins going day after day, especially when, life gets in the way, our next idea offers a really powerful strategy. It's about outsmarting your future, lazier self.
Outsmarting future me. I definitely need that sometime. What is it?
It's using micro rules.
Micro rules. Okay, I'm really curious about these. How do these little contracts you make with yourself actually work? How do they outsmart that inner resistance we all have?
They're brilliant because they essentially take the thinking out of staying consistent. They act like personal guardrails,
Yeah.
protecting your consistency from distractions, from that internal debate of should I or shouldn't I.
Can you give an example?
Sure. For me, for a while, it was, I can only play video games after I write down 5 new English phrases.
Huh. That's clever.
Yeah.
Did it work?
It really did. And guess what? I actually started picking up new words faster, just so I could get to the gaming part sooner.
That's basically gamifying your own discipline.
Exactly. It means you don't have to decide every single day whether you feel like doing the thing or not. The rule makes the decision for you. It removes that constant drain on your willpower.
Okay, I love this. So here's a challenge for you listening. Create your own micro rule.
Yeah.
It could be anything, right? Like, no watching my favorite TV show unless I use English subtitles and write down 3 new expressions.
Perfect. Or no coffee until I practice speaking for 60 seconds. Whatever works for you.
The key is to make it maybe a little fun, but definitely non-negotiable. The less you have to think, the more you just do.
Precisely. And look, even with all these clever hacks, these micro rules, these systems, some days are still going to feel incredibly heavy.
Oh, for sure.
You'll be tired, you'll be unmotivated, maybe even sick or just really stressed out. And that's where our next point becomes an absolute lifesaver.
This is so important because bad days happen to everyone. They aren't the enemy, right? It's doing nothing on those days that can really derail you.
Exactly. Consistency doesn't mean you have to give 100% every single day. That's impossible. It just means that even on your absolute worst day, you still show up somehow.
I remember this one week, I was just super burnt out, 0 energy. But I had this pre-decided bare minimum rule for English practice. Just listen to 2 minutes of English audio while I brush my teeth.
That was it.
That was it. But you know what? I did it, and it kept the streak alive, kept the habit from breaking completely.
Mm-hmm. I had one too. For those days when everything just felt overwhelming, my rule was just read 1 sentence out loud before bed, no matter how late it was or how tired I felt.
Just 1 sentence.
Just 1. It wasn't much, obviously, but it sent this really important message to my brain. Hey, I'm still in the game. I'm not quitting. I'm just adjusting for today.
That tiny action, it kept the commitment alive.
So the key is to prepare for those tough days before they actually happen. Decide your absolute bare minimum now for when those hard days inevitably show up.
And it should be something so small, so easy, you can practically do it half asleep.
Because when the hard days hit and having that bare minimum ready to go, that's what keeps the fire alive, prevents a complete stop. Exactly. And, all these strategies we've talked about, building systems, growing the muscle, linking habits, embracing the boring, using micro rules, having a bare minimum, they all kind of culminate in this ultimate shift. This is the core idea we really want you to take away from this deep dive today.
Okay, what is it?
Consistency becomes truly easy when it becomes part of your identity.
Wow. Okay, that's a profound thought. So it's not about waking up every morning and asking, okay, what should I force myself to do today?
No, it's about knowing deep down, this is who I am.
Like, I don't write podcast scripts every week just because I force myself anymore.
Yeah.
I do it because, well, I'm someone who creates. It's just part of my identity now.
That identity shift changes everything. And if we connect this back to learning English, think about the difference. It's the difference between saying, I'm trying to learn English versus
I'm an English speaker and I'm still improving.
Exactly. Or think about someone who says, I'm trying to read more. That implies effort, struggle, maybe forcing it. But if they say, I'm a reader,
Then reading a page or 2 just confirms who they already are.
precisely. Every action, even a tiny one, supports that identity. It's no longer about forcing, it's simply about being.
Okay, so the advice is, start telling yourself the story you want to live. Maybe say it out loud, write it on a sticky note.
Whatever works. I'm the kind of person who practices English every day, even if it's just for 5 minutes.
And then, when life throws distractions at you or laziness kicks in or doubts creep up, you come back to your identity, not just your fleeting feelings.
That's how real sustainable consistency is built.
Yep.
Quietly, daily, not by forcing yourself into action all the time, but by becoming the person who naturally takes those actions.
You don't have to be perfect.
Not at all. You just need to be the kind of person who keeps showing up.
And we're genuinely proud of you listening right now for doing exactly that. Just by tuning in today, by engaging with this deep dive, you've already shown up for yourself.
Mm-hmm. You didn't just wait for motivation to magically appear. You actively sought this out. That's what consistent people do.
Definitely. And to help you keep showing up, especially if English is your focus, we've got a quick vocabulary segment now just to help you lock in some of the key language we use today so you can speak with maybe a bit more confidence and clarity.
Yeah, let's solidify these terms.
Okay, let's unpack these. First up was glamorous.
Right. Glamorous. This basically describes something that looks really exciting or beautiful or maybe fancy, But sometimes that's only on the outside, you know?
Like the reality might be different.
Exactly. For example, working on a film set seemed glamorous, but honestly, it was actually exhausting.
Okay. Next, when something sneaks up on you.
Oh, yeah. This means something happens kind of slowly or quietly without you really noticing, and then suddenly, boom, it's there. Often unexpectedly.
Like a deadline.
Perfect example. The deadline totally sneaked up on me and I wasn't ready at all.
Got it. Then autopilot.
Autopilot is when you do something automatically, almost without thinking, usually because it's a habit.
Like your morning routine.
He made his morning coffee completely on autopilot.
Okay. How about when you negotiate with yourself?
That's that internal debate you have in your head, right? Like, should I do it now? Should I wait till later? Am I too tired?
The back and forth.
Yeah. For example, she kept negotiating with herself about whether she should start studying or just watch one more episode.
We've all been there. Okay, flip a switch.
Flip a switch. This means trying to change something instantly, like clicking something on or off.
But it usually doesn't work like that with habits or feelings.
Exactly. You can't just flip a switch and suddenly feel motivated. It takes time.
Right. Now, a trigger, specifically in habit building.
Yes, a trigger is that small action or cue that reminds your brain it's time to start doing a particular habit. It kicks off the routine.
Like your tea example earlier.
Hearing the kettle boil was her trigger to grab her journal and start writing.
Makes sense. Gamifying.
Gamifying is when you turn a task, maybe a boring one, into a game. You make it feel more fun or rewarding, often by adding rules or points.
Like your video game micro rule.
Exactly. He gamified his workouts by giving himself points for every session he completed.
Cool. Then the bare minimum.
The bare minimum. This is doing the absolute smallest thing you possibly can, but it still counts as progress. Especially important on those really tough days.
That one sentence example.
Right. On her busiest days, she just did the bare minimum for her English practice. One sentence out loud. It kept the chain going.
And finally, a really important one we mentioned. To show up for yourself.
Yes. This means keeping a promise you made to yourself. Honoring your commitment, even when it's difficult or inconvenient, or maybe when no one else is watching.
It's about personal integrity.
It really is. For example, he didn't feel like practicing his presentation, but he did it anyway. He showed up for himself.
Love that.
Absolutely. And remember, everyone, consistency. It doesn't need to be this huge, dramatic, perfect thing. It just needs to be yours. Daily, quiet, real.
So yeah, we commend you again for showing up today, for taking this deep dive with us. You didn't wait for motivation, you actively engaged. And that right there is the hallmark of consistent people. Your progress doesn't stop here.
So maybe consider this as we wrap up. How can you start telling yourself the story of the person you are becoming through your own consistent actions? Because that powerful identity shift, it can genuinely impact all areas of your life, not just the one you're focusing on right now. Something to think about.